Good morning, everyone. I would love to have us all stand as we start our time of music together, and then you can feel free to take whatever posture feels right for you. But really glad that you're here this morning. There's a world at war, caught in suffering, silent casualties. Oh God, grant us peace. In these sleepless nights, I can hardly breathe. Despite brutality, I know that we'll be free. I know that we'll be free. Let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All the love dares us to see, we'll all be free. In these desperate times, love will hold us here. Love will join our hands, teach us to have no fear. So we lay our hate down to wash their feet. When we see our brother, oh, we'll all be free. Yes, we'll all be free. Let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All the love dares us to see, we'll all be free. Let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All the love dares us to see, we'll all be free. We are free, free. We all are free. We are free, free. We all are free. We'll be free, free. We'll all be free. We'll be free, free. We'll all be free. Let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All the love dares us to see, we'll all be free. Let the light in, keep it shining. Let it break into the darkness. All the love dares us to see, we'll all be free. In the valley, oh God, you're near. In the quiet, oh God, you're near. At my shadow, oh God, you're near. At my breaking, oh God, you're near. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love will stand firm through all my life. In my searching, Oh God, you're near in my wandering. Oh God, you're near when I feel alone. Oh God, you're near at my lowest. Oh God, you're near. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love will stand firm through all my life. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love stands firm through all my life. And height nor depth nor anything else could pull us apart. We are joined as one by your love. And hope will rise as we become more than sufferers through the one who loved the world. And height nor depth nor anything else could pull us apart. We are joined as one by your love. And hope will rise as we become more than sufferers through the one who loved the world. And oh God, you never leave my side. Your love stands firm through all my life. And oh God, you never leave my side. Your love stands firm through all my life. I would love for you all to just take a moment to breathe with me, to sit in this stillness a little while longer. And as you breathe, scan through your body. Notice how you are feeling today. Where there may be tension or tiredness. Where there is space for celebration and joy. Would you breathe deeply, knowing that there is a God that holds all of those things together, all of the emotions and all of the physical sensations, that we get to have a companion in navigating all of it. And would you continue to focus on your breathing, on your breath, as we sing a few more songs here. God help me walk that lonesome valley. God help me walk it for myself. Nobody else can walk it for me. God help me walk that valley for myself. Jesus had to walk that lonesome valley. Jesus had to walk it for himself. Nobody else could walk it for him. Jesus had to walk that valley for himself. My mother had to walk that lonesome valley. My mother had to walk it for herself. Nobody else could walk it for her. My mother had to walk that valley for herself. My father had to walk that lonesome valley. My father had to walk it for himself. Nobody else could walk it for him. My father had to walk that valley for himself. God help me walk that lonesome valley. God help me walk it for myself, and nobody else can walk it for me. God help me walk that valley for myself. You are not possessive. You respect all things. You are not invasive. You have no envy. You are not insistent. You do not force me. You are not controlling. You make me free indeed. You're my deliverer. You're my deliverer. You won't pass me by. You're my deliverer. You're my deliverer. You won't pass me by. freedom, and mercy is your rule. And though you dwell within me, I can't contain you. You're my deliverer, you're my deliverer. You won't pass me by. You're my deliverer, you're my deliverer. You won't pass me by. In the ruins of my heart, you preach to the poor, turning over stones to show me there is more than all I ask, more than I'm looking for. In the ruins of my heart, in the ruins of my heart, you preach to the poor, turning over stones to show me there is more than all I ask, more than I'm looking for. In the ruins of my heart, in the ruins of my heart, you're my deliverer, you're my deliverer. You won't pass me by. You're my deliverer, you're my deliverer. You won't pass me by. You're my deliverer, you're my deliverer. You won't pass me by. You're my deliverer, you're my deliverer. You won't pass me by. We've been using a prayer of lament from the book A Rhythm of Prayer for the past several weeks, and I want to read a piece of it for us now as we pray together. So would you join me? As we continue to take the single step that is in front of us, Jesus, keep us from becoming what we are called to transform. Protect us from using the empire's violence in our words, in our theology, in our activism, in our politics, for your kingdom of peace. Keep our anger from becoming meanness. Keep our sorrow from collapsing into self-pity. Keep our hearts soft enough to keep breaking. Keep our outrage turned towards justice, not cruelty. Remind us that all of this, every bit of it, is for love. Keep us fiercely kind. Keep us in community. Keep us clinging to grace. Amen. You can go ahead and take your seats.
Let's just give a special thank you to Hayley and Kay for this morning's worship. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for showing up on this August sort of gloomy but warm day. So, real fun to be in. My name is Beth, and I just want to say a special welcome if you are new or newer here to this community. If you'd like to participate in our live chat for this morning, there's another QR code on your screen, and it will get you to the Discord app, which will allow you to be in our chat this morning. Our moderator is Jen, and she will be hanging out if you have a comment or question or if you need anything this morning. Brown Line Church is both a local and online community. We are based here in Chicago, but we draw many from beyond this area every Sunday morning. And if you're joining us from afar, please just let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. This church was started to help people to connect with a God of love, to find spiritual health and community, and to contribute to justice and healing in the world. In particular, we find this church serves people who feel more comfortable in culturally progressive settings rather than culturally religious settings. People who didn't necessarily grow up in highly religious environments, or even people who have chosen to leave those types of environments. Our guide here is simply Jesus. There are religious settings that present faith in Jesus as an exclusive thing that you're either inside or outside of, but that's never been our experience here. For us, following Jesus has always made us more open and never more closed off. So with all of that, I'd like to invite Hayley as well as Laura and Leicester back up for our message this morning. Let's give them a hand.
Good
really
morning.
Morning.
This is fun.
Is it?
So fun. So this week we are continuing on in our conversation around redeeming religious language that may have lost meaning for us. So this may be terminology that you've used before, or that you've heard used, or that you continue to use right now. And some of the meaning may have gotten a little bit lost in translation. Things that used to feel meaningful might now feel a little empty or even harmful. And so we've been going through some words here that fall into that category. So some of this, even if you didn't grow up in a religious context, words like God's plan or blessed has worked its way into popular culture too. So you've definitely still been impacted by that. And our hope isn't just to sit around and critique a bunch of Christianese phrases, but to actually look at their intent and see if maybe offering something different in their place could have more meaning and hope for us now. So we last week pulled together this really big word cloud of a bunch of different examples of these words that people have written in to say like, hey, this is a word that for me has lost meaning. And so today I'm excited because Laura and Leicester are joining me to kind of do a grab bag talking through of a bunch of different phrases. So it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be really fun. I don't know, Laura's face seems like...
I'm really scared, but that's okay. Yeah.
But for both of you, I'm wondering if we could just ease into the conversation a bit, if you could talk about some of your experience with Christian culture that these words come out of and what it's looked like to navigate that, or even like coming out of that experience too.
You want to go?
No, you can go first.
Okay. I'm Laura. I grew up in Louisiana. We both grew up in Louisiana. I grew up in a smaller town. And I mean, like, as you probably could guess, like, Christian culture is really big there. And my particular, the one that I stepped into was like evangelical Christianity, non-denominational. And the time that I went, I was like probably like in junior high. And at that time, our town had this really cataclysmic sort of event that happened, or that came into view, or like that kind of came out was, I don't know if y'all ever saw True Detective, but the first season, is based off of something that happened in my hometown. There was a pastor and a sheriff and some other church members who basically there was a lot of like abuse happening in the church. It was like this satanic panic sort of thing that happened where a lot of really horrible things kind of came out of it. And the response of the community was to not talk about it, but to fervently be like, the devil made me do it. Let's, rally and let's become really like entrenched in Christian culture. And so I went to the church where most of those members of that church came from. So they all flocked to this very specific church that kind of had a very it was just really, really intense. It was a really, really intense experience of Christianity. And this response to making sure that the devil doesn't, infiltrate you and make you do bad things, things like that. So, so evangelical, but also just a little touch of, traumatic things that happened that the church community responded to. So that was where that's where I came from.
So my Christian background is definitely different. I grew up in a wealth and prosperity church, so very money-centric. I would argue very individualistic, very much about giving your money to the church, and then God will bless you. I left that church around 16, 17, and went into a very, I guess you could argue, evangelical church, maybe not quite as intense, but a pretty evangelical church, which served me at the time to get away from kind of the wealth and prosperity gospels, but by the time we went to college, it was no longer serving me. And as Laura mentioned, we both grew up in Louisiana, so I think a lot of that language is kind of entrenched in the culture regardless. I didn't grow up with a lot of fire and brimstone in the wealth and prosperity church, but some of that just kind of feeds into you regardless because of the culture that's around. So,
Yeah, I think depending on your context, it kind of seeps into, whether you're explicitly using that language or directly surrounded by people that are talking about it, it still seeps into other conversations and way of thinking, which we'll get into. I kept saying that I was going to have an actual bag to pull the terms out of because I thought that would be so fun. I didn't do that. So we can imagine that my iPad is me pulling out some terms here. But let's get into some of these. And these are all words that people suggested. And in the word cloud itself, if you go back and look at it, it's in our Discord channel, and it's the picture on our social media for this week too. You can see that the bigger the phrase is, the more people wrote in about that particular term. So one of the biggest ones is love the sinner, hate the sin. So I'd like for us to start, just starting pretty light. Love the sinner, hate the sin. What comes to mind for you with what the intent with this one might be? What's behind it?
I feel like, go ahead.
I feel like for me personally, my experience that is maybe 90% of the time has been used specifically towards the queer community from my experience. And so I could absolutely make an argument that, you want to be able to be friends and caring and loving to people you disagree with, but certainly I have mostly heard it towards the queer community, and it feels very separating. This is something that, people just are. It's not simply an act to disagree with, and it feels, somewhat isolating in that sense.
Yeah, I think that when pieces of identity are just labeled sinful in general,
Right.
It's not even action-based or behavioral-based. It just actually becomes who you are as a person.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is, so I'm like one of 6 children, and most of my siblings still live in Louisiana. And one of my brothers, he's just like, he'll send me like these videos of like, like he's like, oh, this is so good. And he like sends me like a Bible verse. I don't know why, because like every time like he sends it to me, I'm like I don't say anything, but it's just like almost a passive aggressive thing. It feels like sometimes, but he'll send me like he sent me this video about like, like treating being gay as like any other sin, and I had this long discussion with him around it, and he was just like, like this is something that always happens is like they're always like I got gay friends, I love them, like, and they understand, and like, like they get it though, like of course I'm not gonna believe, I'm not gonna believe that it's okay, and like we can still be friends, like we can still, and I think like there's just this like belittling and this sort of like it feels almost like condescending to be like in a friendship with somebody and have this limitation of like, I don't agree with who you are as a person, but like I still love you, and like I still want to have a relationship with you. Like that's really hard, and I think that it is so isolating, like you were saying, and it's, I think it's just really, it can be really traumatizing for anybody to feel like you don't agree with things that really have meaning for me, and that is really like, it's already hard to live out this truth in general. Yeah. And I can't do that fully with you because you think that like I'm sinning. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it becomes a very conditional type of loving someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's always like that, yes, but, like, yeah. And so all the love and all the like connection and all the, always has this limitation to it.
Yeah, for each of these, I'd love for us to decide, and if you want to kind of track too as we're talking, if this is a phrase that we could either keep it, toss it, or change it. Our 3 categories here. This is a thing where like the rules don't make sense, the points don't matter, whatever that is. But would we keep this, toss it, or change it? For love the sinner, hate the sin.
Love the sinner, hate the sin. Oh, God. I don't know. I told Hayley ahead of time, I was like, I'm going to tell you every time, toss it. But, like, that's just me.
Yeah, I'm slower to just simply toss things, but this happens to be one that, I'd have to say toss it. At least with my experience, it really has just been one way. I haven't really seen it talked about for like any other quote unquote sin, so I would say toss it.
Yeah, I would say toss it for this one too. I think it's probably the most weaponized out of all the ones that we've gotten. So that would be my take, to toss it. But let's move to this one, lukewarm, being a lukewarm Christian.
Do we have time to tell our story? Can we tell our
our
quick church story?
Mm-hmm.
We met in college, and we happened to go to the same service. It was like this, Christian ministry, like sort of like service that you can go to. And like we were there and we didn't know each other. We were experiencing this amazing thing that happened at the same time. But yeah, like, do you want to go into it? Okay.
Sure. The pastor at the time wanted to give a sermon on being a lukewarm Christian and how God will spew you from his mouth if you are a lukewarm Christian. And so they decided to do the gallon milk challenge through the entire sermon. And so the entire time he's speaking, he had some of the young boys come up and try to drink a gallon of milk. And so they're puking.
Yeah.
The
puking
entire
in like
time.
gallon trash cans. Like, so like, he's like, yeah, I don't want to be a lukewarm Christian. And like, and he's
How
like, he's
strange.
also,
Like, how many people did this plan go through for them to be like, yes,
I
the
don't
milk
know.
challenge on stage?
Right.
This is the same guy who like set off firecrackers inside
In
like
the
the
church,
church. Like
yeah.
it was like all like sensational, like, stunts or whatever
Yeah.
for God. And like, and so, he's also chugging this, like, he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it too. And he's like chugging and like, preaching, and everyone's throwing up behind him. And, like, and he can't throw up. So like at one point he's just like literally like sitting back on the stairs, and he's just like, ugh, like he couldn't puke. Like he was like trying to make himself puke like in the middle of
do it.
service because he was so uncomfortable. So anyway, yeah, that language has a lot of
That's what comes to mind with being lukewarm.
yeah, it was
That lovely
horrific.
imagery. My gosh.
Yeah, for us, that's what comes to mind.
Yeah.
I have to mention, Laura brought up the fireworks in the church.
Yeah.
During that service, he also lit flares
Jesus Christ.
that were
Sorry.
behind him, and the lights were off, and so the flares were just going.
It's
it
a
was
lot.
wild.
Louisiana is freaking crazy, you guys. Like, it's crazy. Like anything to get you in the seat, like they're gonna do. But yeah, like I feel like the biggest. I was like, I really want to talk about being lukewarm, because I don't know if that's been an experience. I don't know if anybody's like gone to church and had people be like, don't be a lukewarm Christian. Like that was huge where I went to church and I was like just going in at like junior high. So my brain is still kind of like trying to form and just trying to figure out things. And I feel like that term being lukewarm is like, I think it just infiltrates. It's like almost this like white supremacist sort of like, it's like this perfectionist tendency to be like all or nothing. And like that really affected me. Like it affected every part of my life. Even when I left that church, it was like, I can't be just, I have to be like in or out, like in anything that I do. And so it just caused a lot of harm for me. Yeah. And like in so many ways of my life. So I would fervently say toss it, but I don't know.
Yeah, this is one God, it's kind of cringy for sure. The like lukewarm Christian, you have to be on fire for God. This is one where, again, I feel like you can actually make a positive. I see some parallels towards kind of the idea that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X talked about of like liberals who, aren't actually doing anything, liberals who say that they care and they want things to change, but, don't protest that way, like you're a little too abrasive. I think whenever I think of God or Jesus more in the liberation sense or caring for people, I can also see a way of saying maybe you shouldn't be lukewarm on that. I mean, our culture is, I'd say, somewhat passive and lukewarm around helping those in need. And I don't know the best way to phrase it, because I do think lukewarm Christian is tied to a lot of things. It can be very cringy, and so I think there's maybe a better way to say it, but I'm not sure what that way is, if I'm going to be honest. But
yeah, I've been thinking about with this one that don't fall into apathy might be a better way to put it. Because I think what you're saying here too is getting at the communal nature of it, like not being lukewarm as an individual or being on fire for God, that language too, as an individual. It becomes very much about like you, individual person.
It's very egocentric.
Personal relationship with this like, I don't know. It limits what it could actually look like. What you're talking about here is more of a communal experience.
absolutely.
And how apathy can actually keep us from moving forward from caring for other people, from being active, but it doesn't put the stress on having these like individual showy responses that are only focused on faithfulness.
Yeah. And like the language that it used too for, I guess, me was don't be a lukewarm Christian in the sense of, you know, you have to witness to people. You have to go and save souls. Like
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. And that's the narrative in your brain. It wasn't about helping people. It wasn't really about even helping people. I would say it was about pushing an agenda, and making someone see in your point of view and bring them into the fold. So I think that it was toxic language around a toxic purpose. Mm-hmm. What you're saying is much healthier. Yeah. So.
Agreed. Well, let's move to the next one. This is God helps those who help themselves.
Is that the catchphrase to like being below the Bible Belt? Like, I don't even know, but.
It kind of sounds like it. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, again, growing up in the Wealth and Prosperity Church, I think it's very individualistic. And it makes me think about those who don't have anything. My experience from the Wealth and Prosperity Church is God's blessings coming in very economical forms. Good job, a bunch of money coming in, that type of thing. And so it immediately for me makes me think of those who have less. And are we saying they haven't tried hard enough? You know, have they just not, because God helps those who help themselves. And it also has me thinking about some of the families that I've met who may be low income, but you can kind of feel the love radiating from them. Mm-hmm. And to me, that is also a blessing. Like, absolutely, materialism matters in the sense that, like, we need to feed people and care for people. But also, I've seen God's blessing in people who have less, but just have so much love to share and still have a good, fulfilling life. So.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. It does feel really individualistic to be like, you need to help yourself and then God will come in and help you. I think being here in Chicago, you know, it's changed me a lot. Doing mutual aid work, being in those spaces where you realize that, like, if I have hard times, my community is going to come in and support me. Mm-hmm. I think that is a stronger message than, you know, you need to show that you're making an effort to get, you know, your resources. I think it's a stronger message of saying, like, I know that if something happens, God and my community are going to come in and walk beside me. Instead of, you know, it's just like more communal. Mm-hmm. That feels better to me.
Yeah, and I think it's similar to like pick yourself up by the bootstraps type of thing that we hear in more so conservative political circles. It can, just like that, it can feel empowering if you're the one who finally made it or has money because you just like did it on your own. But I don't think it's reality. I think in most cases that whole I did it on my own, you didn't. Like, very often, certainly in my case, my family has helped out a lot, having friends there for you. And so, like Laura's talking about, that community piece, I think, is more empowering and helpful.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Because I do think the intent of this one is supposed to be some type of motivation. And, I mean, you named this too. It's a partnership with God. Like, that's still present in the term itself. But But who is that partnership actually with if it's only people who are helping themselves? Like that category in general is just going to be a lot more privileged, able-bodied people with access to resources. So instead, if we widen that to be more, I like what you said of like my community and God have my back in this.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. White people are weird. They just are. Like, they're just so, like, I don't know. We were watching this anarchist documentary on HBO. Anyway, sorry. I'm going to go on a tangent. Whatever. I'm up here. I got the mic. No, but it's like something happened to where they don't believe in the government getting involved, so they don't call the police when, like, emergencies happen. So someone got shot, and someone was putting out a post on Facebook like, hey, this person's just got shot. Like, I'm really scared. I'm alone, like, in this house. And no one came. Like, it was like this, like, you know, they had these like conferences where there's like, yeah, like, you know, we're going to be banding together as a community. And then like it all became about like, you know, you like I'm not, no, like it's very like like, oh no, I need to protect myself. I'm not going to put myself in harm's way in order to like, so, you know, I think it's just really funny and then like, you know, there were those few people who really had that sense of community of just like, no, there are like other ways to solve our problems where we don't have to depend on these like systems that are unfair and unjust. But then like when it comes down to it, you know, like you need those people who are just going to be like, you're in harm. Like I want to be there with you. Right. Like that feels more of like the Christian spirit than, you know, someone being like, I go to church, you know, every Sunday, but I don't actually like, I don't have that kind of community with like people where like there's actual problems that people are having. It's not just like, you know, I don't know. So it's just, I just think about that and it feels like in some way like a very like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is totally off base, but it does feel like a white person thing to be really individualistic.
Yeah,
But
I mean, yeah, it's very individualistic for sure. And I mean, what other way does God show up but through community? At least from my experience, the biggest blessings I've had are definitely driven by my community, be it family or friends. And so when it's just God helps those who help themselves, sometimes it can obscure that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, changing this one to have it be something still keeping that like motivation, because you need to lean into community as well,
Right.
and partnership with God, but that the partnership isn't just reserved for certain types of people. I think that's the key for changing this one for me.
yeah.
But let's move on to the next one. This is a big one. We did a separate talk on purity culture in general, that you could go back and listen to. We archive all of these messages. But a lot of people wrote about either guard your heart or headship or purity. That purity was a really popular one. So I figured we could at least touch on it today, but there's a whole lot here.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
I don't even know where to begin.
I know. Yeah.
I think if we're starting with intention here, I think the intended purpose of things like guard your heart or remaining pure, whatever that may be, it's an intent for protection, but it doesn't actually protect people in the end. There's some sense of like, if you've got an all or nothing way of being around this, you're not going to be harmed. And so I think that the intent behind it is protect the person that you are with and protect yourself, but that rarely comes to be out of a place that's rooted in purity and not actually rooted in love.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, I grew up like, I don't know. It's weird. I think that with purity culture, it almost is this trauma response. Like, harm was done. Like, I think that I grew up in a house where there was like, it wasn't safe. And so whenever I went to church, and I started going to church like junior high through high school, like it felt better to not, like it felt better to like live in that purity culture, because like I just like had a lot of issues around that. And so, you know, but then there's that flip side, you know, when you are, and then you grow up and you like become an adult, like, and then you're like, wow, like, you know, like it's like that, those like sexual experiences, those romantic experiences help you grow as a person. And if like you're kind of barred from that, or that feels like there's this barrier around that, there's like extreme emotions, especially like tied with hormones, like, and then also just like if you do get in a situation like we were talking about, you know, like your first sexual experiences are clumsy, and a lot of times you don't talk about consent, you don't talk about like all of those things, and like if you think that it's supposed to go a certain way, but you don't have any knowledge or understanding, and on top of that you are told you shouldn't be doing it anyway, there's no way for you to get like proper communication around like making sure that you and your partner are safe emotionally stepping into that. And that happens a lot in college, right? Where like, you know, a lot of just like sexual assault cases come up because like there isn't that language and that communication, because people are coming and stepping out of like these really strict kind of like parameters around that. So I think there's a lot of harm that can be done with purity culture in that way.
Yeah, like Laura mentioned, I can understand the protection part. You know, we don't have kids yet, but thinking about having kids, I can understand where parents may be coming from in terms of, you know, supporting purity culture, I guess you could say, for some protection. But also, like Laura's saying, you know, when you're young, teenager, early 20s, like this stuff can be messy, and the black and white of purity culture, the like you just shouldn't do it, is a extreme oversimplification. I think, like Laura said, it can kind of stunt your ability to talk about these things. It can be a hard topic, I think, for a lot of religious people who do grow up with purity culture, but it's something that has to be talked through in order to help keep people safe, I think. You know, it's going to be easier to keep people safe if you do talk through and figure out things like consent. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm also just thinking of the way that shame plays into all of this too, and fear, that those are both really big pieces of, I think, not intended pieces of purity culture, but that definitely come to be. And so if we're changing this one so that the focus isn't around purity, I think about the scripture that says, like, perfect love casts out all fear. And so what does it look like to be in a space where there is enough of a loving environment to set healthy boundaries, and make sure that there's consent and things like that, like all these things we're talking about, so that the focus isn't on the purity itself, but on something loving that's not shameful and not fearful.
Yeah.
Let's move. We've got a couple more here. The next one is forgive and forget.
Oh, okay. I guess it's me.
I mean, you sighed, so I figured
Yeah, that
there was
makes
something
sense.
there.
I kind of led with that. God, you know, I don't know if y'all got like Christian moms, but like, it's so funny. Like, this woman knows how to hold a grudge, but then whenever like, okay, I'm gonna get into it. But then like, you know, she'll be like, okay, well, like, for, you know, like, whenever it comes to like family things, like that, this is for me, like this is what comes up forgive and forget, family things. Oh no, you have to let that go. Like we have to like, in order to like really move on and heal, like you have to forgive, like go ahead and forgive. It always felt like whenever something really harmful happened, right? Like something really harmful in your family, something like really harmful in the church, like it felt like the answer, the go-to was to forgive and forgive prematurely. Like a lot of times it felt like somebody was trying to force me to like forget something, like, or to just like move on and to not really have time to process what had happened. And, I had this discussion with my mom, I have this discussion with her a lot because like that is she's so afraid of like detachment, like, like her kids just detaching because of things that had happened. And so her go-to is be like, forgiveness. Let's not go to bed in anger. Like, let's go ahead and forgive. Like, let's go ahead and keep together. And, I had this discussion with her about like, it takes time. Like, you can't just like force someone to be ready to just like let go of really big things, especially when you're not actually talking about those things and communicating. And also like being like, are you going to prevent it from happening again? Like, is there any steps for, the things that are happening that are maybe like cyclical from happening again? And so those are like really big conversations I've had with my family, because like I kind of went on the like, my defense was to be like, okay, like I'll just forget, like I'll just like forgive and forget. And like then it kept happening over and over and over again, but I had no outlet to actually talk through it because of that language. So
Yeah, I think the intent of saying it is healing things, but if it just keeps happening or there's never any resolution or restoration taking place, like that's not healing.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like forgetting may be the sticking point for me. I think forgiveness is very big and valuable. Certainly if you believe in like restoration and the ability that for everyone to kind of be better people, I do think forgiveness is very important, but forget might be the sticking point, because like you just said, I think there needs to be some type of way to resolve it or deal with the issue, so it's not just happening over and over and over again. There's definitely something about forgive and forget that can be dismissive to the victim of whatever it is that's happening.
Yeah. Two things that come to mind for me. It's always dangerous when I number things before my thoughts have fully formed, because I'm like, are there actually two there? But yeah, two things. The first, in the kind of the therapy world, I'd picked up the phrase of radical acceptance. That can be kind of synonymous with forgiveness. A lot of times I think what this forgive and forget mentality is trying to do is that it becomes for the other person that did something wrong to you. But instead, forgiveness can be about our own spaces of healing, and it takes so much brain power really to hold on to bitterness and resentment and anger, and that's just exhausting. So what does it look like to not just forgive, but to radically accept what has happened? I think that would replace, that was my second thing, is I think forgive and find healing might be a better way to change this so that the forgetfulness piece isn't there. Because I think when we say forget, it just assumes that there has to be a lot of invalidation of our own pain taking place.
Yeah, it's really triggering for me, actually, like when someone tells me to forgive. Like, I don't ever take it well. I don't know. Like, maybe it's like me, but I don't take it well because it does feel like it is a way to silence me in some way, in order to kind of move on and not have to actually deal with things. So it took a while, and that does feel better to kind of just like, forgiveness is for me. It's not like, it's like something that I have to grapple with. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to deal with that externally, like, yet, probably with people. Like, how to kind of be like, do I really forgive this person, or am I like just afraid, of like being in conflict with this person? So
I like the idea of radical acceptance. To me, that's almost, yeah, like you said, almost what forgiveness is getting at, because I think Laura's right. It can be silencing sometimes when you're like, oh, you just have to forgive them. Like,
Yeah.
let it go. That happened a long time ago. I think radical acceptance, it is kind of about you being able to accept what happened to you, and that you may not be able to change that other person. And hopefully that can help you move past it,
Yeah, it doesn't over-spiritualize what's taking place. But we'll go to our last one here as we close. So this is God told me. So starting something with God told me, blank.
that always confused me.
Did he? I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, how? Like, Lord, I don't even know. I don't know. It's just weird. It's just like when people are like, God told me this. Like, over like in church, I don't know if y'all ever went to like an evangelical church or whatever, but they're like, God told me this and da da da. And I'm just like, that is so confident of you to just like straight up be like, God said this to me. And like, also it's just kind of scary. Like, I don't know, like, cause like, it just feels like what is God saying to people? Like, I don't even know. So
I think the
I'm
intent
sorry.
here. No, I think the intent here is to communicate like a really deep conviction about something,
Yeah.
and to almost have this like stamp of legitimacy behind how you're feeling.
sorry. It's like-
But I think that that's the intent of this one.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that that's the intent. I find it, I don't know, similarly, I'm not sure where to go with that, because I think
Yeah.
you're right. I think that is the intent, is some type of legitimacy, but for me, it's a question, is it actually legitimate? A lot of people use God said for a lot of horrible things, and I think it kind of, it will be proven out by the fruit of, the action, because there's absolutely positive things in the world that like people are like, God led me to do this, and I'm like, yes. And then there's also like, God told me this is my land, and it's like, no. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So is this a toss it, a keep it, a change it?
I think it's a context, right? Like, I think in context, I feel like if someone is on stage, if I'm here, they're like, y'all, God told me, don't listen to me. Like, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like if someone's saying in a conversation, like, God told me this, like, this is what I'm pursuing. But I feel like in some way, when you have a mic and you're on stage and you're talking to people about what God told you, they're not just saying what God told you, like that person, they're saying, this is what God told you.
Yeah,
This is what God is telling you to do. And that feels really dangerous to me. So
yeah, very big power dynamic, because if God told me and I'm the pastor, then yeah, he's telling
you
me
too.
what to
That's
do.
how it feels. Like, I mean, maybe it's not, I think it's like it's a passive way to get someone to submit under your belief system and your theory about how to, do something.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to say just toss it, because I certainly believe God can speak to people, but there's something about that power dynamic that is questionable. I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I think for me, something that helps this one is either having the clarifier, I think. Anytime I was listening to a podcast the other day, actually, that was talking about how more frequently women use the word I think in sentences than men do.
Yeah.
So I think that this is what we should do. I think that this fact that is actually factual and true, but you have to qualify it. But with this one, I think even having because I do think that God can speak through people and communities and things like that. But even having it be like, I think that God is bringing this to mind for me, for you. Like that changes it instead of, God told me that you need to go do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Or even asking, and we talked about consent, like even asking the person, like, hey, something came to mind when I was praying for you. Do you mind if I share that? Like that changes it instead of just this prescriptive, I am the mouthpiece of God type of mentality.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a fun little grab bag of things. And we're actually going to come back to this during our time of communion as well, so that you can talk with people around you about some of these phrases. But I'm going to pray for us, and then we'll close here.
Okay.
Jesus, I thank you that you are a God that consistently modeled compassion and grace, that you paid attention to things like the words that you were saying and who you were speaking to, that you empowered and that you provide a model for us of how to graciously enter into conversations with those we may disagree with, how to graciously look back on our own stories and how we've grown or changed, knowing that at the time we were doing the best with what we had, and that we can continue to try and do the best with what we have in each stage of our lives. As we sort through what feels meaningful to bring forward with us and what may feel more meaningful to leave behind, God, I thank you that you are with us in that process. I thank you for the gift of community that was brought up this morning over and over, God, that we don't do any of this work alone, but that we have community to lean on. And may we be the type of community that others can lean on as well. Amen. If we can give Laura and Leicester a round of applause for joining me up here.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I just thank you, all three of you, for a chance to kind of go through all of those little phrases. I don't know if any of you were on Discord. I highly recommend that you just check it out for this morning, because we were also having our own little live chat going through. Definitely there were a handful of us that were like, yes, that's exact, yes. So in case you were wondering, there were two conversations going on at the same time. So we really appreciate the fuel that you brought for us to be able to have those conversations. If you are newer to us, either in here in the auditorium or even online, we do have another QR code for you up there. If you can go ahead and fill that out if you're newer, or if you feel like we don't have your information. It's a great way to connect to the church. You can also follow us on our social media, which is at Brownline Church on Instagram and I believe Facebook. Yes, as someone who's not on Facebook. So you can check those both out for any new updates or anything new that's going on as well. You can also join the Discord with the app that we were talking about before. We also have our financial update, and we just want to thank everyone that is a part of the community that does value the church here. One of the ways that we do that is by giving, because that's how we keep the lights on here and how we actually help our pastors pay their bills as well. We'd like to be transparent with that information, which is why we put that up there every Sunday. If you would like to give, there is another QR code. So please feel free. It's pretty easy. It's a simple process. We do have a couple of announcements today. So next weekend, we have our picnic. That will be at the Wells Park. It's really fun. We don't have an online service next Sunday, so if you're not here locally, we just encourage you to maybe invite someone to go to a coffee shop with you, or just be a part of your community in that weekend as well. We will send out more details this week, either on our social media accounts or with an email list. We also have, I think, the 2 weeks after that, which is August 28th, our annual meeting for our stakeholders. If you've been with us for a little bit of time, or if you've been with us for a few years, then you've seen this already, but we do this once a year, and it's just a time for us to be able to kind of share what's going on in the church and then what's coming ahead. So we will still have our usual time for prayer and music and community, but instead of the message, that's when our church board will host our annual meeting for stakeholders. This is a time for updates and questions about the business and organization side of running our church. Everyone that's here is welcome. So whether this is your first week or you've been here for a while. And for more information, Vince did release a video on Instagram this last week with a little bit more details of what it's going to be and how you can connect in that way. So if you're on our email list, you'll get some more information the week before. And with that, I've got Hayley coming back up.
Each week, we close our time together with the practice of communion. Followers of Jesus across time and culture and different spaces have been using communion as a way to connect with God and to connect with one another. We take elements, something to eat and something to drink, to remember the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And because this is both an individual and a communal act, we actually encourage you to be in conversation with those around you while we take communion with one another. So we will be passing around baskets of crackers. If you're in the theater, you can just use whatever drink that you have around you. And if you're joining from home, you can feel free to grab whatever elements that you want to use. So I will invite you to stand up. There's 2 different levels of conversation starters depending on your mood. The first one is an icebreaker question from Google. That is, would you rather be able to talk to animals or use all of the languages in the world? That was the Google icebreaker question. My not so icebreaker, but just, hey, let's actually talk about things question is looking back at these terms that we mentioned today, and I suspect that some of this conversation is already taking place on Discord. Which one of these phrases feels like for you one that you've either wrestled with before or feel like you have more meaning for today? So I'll read those phrases for us one more time. Love the sinner, hate the sin. Lukewarm Christian. God helps those who help themselves. Purity, forgive and forget, or God told me. So you can talk about some of those with someone around you. Everybody can stand up, and then after we're done chatting for a little bit, we will come back together and pray over the elements. There are gluten-free crackers too. I don't want to interrupt too much good conversation that's happening. Please feel free to keep chatting with people after we pray over our communion elements here and take them together. But if you would join me as we take communion. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, he shared a meal with his community. He broke bread, gave thanks, and said, "This is my body that's broken for you." Likewise, he took the cup and said, "This is my blood poured out for you." When you eat this bread and drink of this cup, you do so in remembrance of me. And so, God, this morning we remember that you are one who offers love freely, that you extend grace, and that you stay in the messiness with us. May we be ones who love freely. May we extend grace. And may we be willing to embrace the messiness within ourselves and within our community. Amen. Thank you so much for being here, and next week we will have our picnic. Have a good week.